Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CXO Masterclass, Future-Proof Your Sales Organization, Preparing for Change and Uncertainty. In today's episode, we're going to focus in on the role that tech and tools play in empowering sales teams. Joining us is Sid Kumar. He is Senior Vice President of RevOps with HubSpot. Hi, Sid.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
When you are talking with your clients, what is the number one thing or goal that they want to accomplish when they come to you?
I would say it's delighting their customers. So we're thinking about how do we create a great customer experience for our customer's customer. And if you think about our platform, it is a front office platform that goes, really from the point of attracting and engaging their prospects all the way through engaging them in a sales cycle to servicing them after they purchase the solution. So they're coming to us because they're typically at some point where they need a digital experience to drive a compelling front end experience for their customers. They're ready to take that digital transformation journey, and HubSpot plays a really key role in helping them deliver that compelling customer experience to their end customers. It's understanding what is our customer trying to do, or what are their objectives in terms of their market, and what does their end customer look like, and then how does HubSpot play a role in crafting that customer experience?
What are some of the roadblocks? What are some of the challenges that you find? Because I'm sure that along the way, there's going to be a customer or a client who they just want more.
It's really trying to understand where they're coming from. It's staying really closely aligned with that customer after the sale. And I think that's why we've had such a big focus on customer success, and that what happens after the sale. Are we ensuring that they're getting activated within a short period of time? Are they driving usage of the solutions in the context of the use cases that they needed to get activated on when we went through the whole sales cycle? So I think a lot of times you see the journey end at the sale, and that's not where it ends, especially in a customer-centric organization. You need to really be thinking about, are they adopting it? Are they getting value? Are they expanding their usage of it? These are all signals that we pay really close attention to see if they're actually getting the value that they anticipated and keeping them as a happy customer.
Well, let's talk a little bit about then your sales reps. How do you prepare them to be able to meet the client's needs, to make sure that it's tailored to what they need? I mean, obviously you have a great product there at HubSpot, but with that being said, product aside, it's also an interaction. So what is your advice then to your sales team?
Yeah, we have a very structured and methodical approach to onboarding. So when we bring our new sales reps on board, they're going through a very structured program, teaches them about product, teaches them about HubSpot, and then core sales skills on how to go represent the value of our different hubs in the context of our customers' use cases. So we start with a structured onboarding program, and then continued reinforcement and re-enablement, or always boarding as we call it, so that they're always staying ahead of what are the new capabilities, what are the new features that are coming out, and staying ahead of it, candidly.
And probably in your experience, that's so true in building the trust with your clients, because when your client feels that they're being taken care of, they then have the confidence in your product.
Spot on, really is. It's if they're going to invest the time to learn and get themselves educated, they want it to be a value added interaction and in their context. I think that's what's really important. Do you understand what they're going through, what problems they're trying to solve, and how does our solution help them go faster in achieving that specific use case and get value like soon, right? They're arguably looking for something to solve a pain point. Can you identify that pain point and help them solve it as fast as possible? That's what it's all about.
Yes, and I feel like at the end of the day, I mean, people, especially in the times that we're in right now, and how people can spend. And if they're going to make an investment and they're going to choose, let's say HubSpot, they want to make sure that they feel almost like they're the only client that you have. So it's kind of finding that balance to make them feel like, okay, you're the only one. So we are going to focus on your needs, your goals, and we're going to make it happen and work as a team. And again, letting your client feel that they're walking away saying, oh my goodness, this is really personalized experience. And that probably goes along with building the trust and then making sure that those contracts, the loyalty is there so that they continue to grow with you.
100%. And it is all about establishing that trust and keeping it. And that's what drives the loyalty. When we think about our go-to-market model, we don't think about it as a funnel. We think about it as a flywheel. It's a closed loop. So it's you're attracting customers, you're engaging them, and then if you delight them, you start to attract more customers. And you have this community and network effect of really satisfied customers that are getting value from their solutions. They're going to go talk about it to other prospects, and then that flywheel keeps spinning. So very much underpinned by trust and value.
When you first started in your career and then you
Yeah.
see what's happening in technology now, I mean,
Uh,
how has there been this shift? Tell me like what you've seen in this landscape.
that the whole shift to just the web. I mean, that's what really started all of this, right? And the move from mainframe to client server to web-based applications in a just a much more distributed world. I think that really democratized access to information, democratized that access to data. So it was really that changed the sales profession, in my opinion, and changing it to a digital sales model that was supplemented and complemented with people. And I think what COVID and the whole pandemic period helped us really realize was this digital world is here to stay, and there's always going to be this interaction between human and digital. And I think understanding what that mix looks like, and it's continuing to evolve. So that was non-existent before the web, and now it's a how do we figure out what that right mix is for our customers. And every company is going to have to answer that in a different way. And even within your company, your different target markets may respond to that in a different way based on geographic, cultural sensitivities and ways of doing business around the globe. And I think that's what makes it so dynamic and exciting, candidly, is continuing to tweak those dials until you figure out what that mix is. If I look back at the past 10 years, I think it's been such a transformation related to just the explosion of the internet, digital, how customers and prospects are engaging with customers has completely changed. And I think the control is much more in the power of the buyer. That's been a big shift over the past, I would say, 10 years or so. And how companies need to engage with those customers or potential customers along that customer journey needs to continue evolving. And just it gets there's more and more data that's being generated with every touch point that customers are interacting with. So I think it's a dynamic period, a lot of change going on. They want access to information like right away at their fingertips when they need it and how in the format and mode they want to consume it. That is a reality, and I think that's around and being able to experience and actually use the product in a trial or a freemium type of capacity. That's a reality of it. So they want to be able to control that journey and then engage a human at the point where they need to engage a human. But then that interaction with the human needs to be really high quality and super high value add. If it's not something they can learn on their own through their own research and through community. I think it's all about how much can a prospect or an existing customer learn about the solution and the capabilities in the context of their use cases without having to engage you. So they can do it on their own time. They can do it at their convenience. And if they're at a point where they've done all the, for lack of a better word, tire kicking that they wanted to do on the solution, then it's okay, can I engage the vendor or the company themselves to give me some more context on how this might work in my specific use case? Or can I
Mhm.
leverage others in the community, listen to analysts, like get some broader outside perspective after I have that foundational understanding and knowledge?
How does technology play a role then when it comes to marketing and your marketing teams?
Yeah, I think the marketing teams play such a critical role in it. I think it's again, go back to that term connected go to market,
Hmm.
and and marketing is working really closely with sales around what does your total addressable market look like, and where do you have the highest intent prospects? How do you go after them in a thoughtful, deliberate way? And I think it's co-creating what that customer engagement model looks like between digital and human. So it's not marketing doing it on one side and sales doing it on the other. It's co-created. What is the customer experience we want to create and believe we need to create? And then how do we craft it between those different touch points? So it's very much a two in a box, and I could even say it's three in a box when you add customer success into it on the post sales side. We're a CRM platform, and on top of it, we have a marketing hub, sales hub, and a service hub. So if you think about those capabilities, it's around providing a connected go to market experience for our customers, and really thinking about how do you think about the marketing, sales, and customer success alignment across that customer journey, so it doesn't feel like a bunch of handoffs that seem disjointed. So to a customer or a prospect, it's a seamless experience for whatever SMB that they happen to be dealing with. So they're looking for integrated customer experience. They're looking for greater connection across their internal functions and more collaboration capability across the internal functions to go deliver on that end-to-end customer experience.
How much do you or even your team, how are you holding their hand throughout this process, or is there a point where you give them the tools that they need and then they really can take it and run with it?
Yeah, I mean, one of our value propositions for HubSpot is just the ease of use and, a crafted, not cobbled experience. So it's meant for SMBs. Our target market is SMBs who may not have extensive investments in technology or lots of IT professionals. So it is a pretty intuitive set of capabilities out of the box. But we have a large ecosystem of partners that will work with them. We have our own services team that will work with our customers as much as they want and need to help them get up and running and get value out of the box.
What are some categories or tools that you can use then that can enable sales and marketing teams to really like talk to one another and just work seamlessly throughout this process?
That's a great question, and I think one that is continually evolving in terms of what that looks like, that landscape of technology. But I would actually back up a little bit and say data is so important in this whole discussion. And data, I view that as the fuel that goes into your CRM and powers the CRM. So whether it's first party data, third party data, just really understanding who your customers are, who your prospects are, what does your total addressable market look like? So I think really spending time on that data foundation, which then will in turn sort of feed your CRM. And then I think there's just a whole set of technologies out there. And I won't attempt to go through all of them, but I think about guided selling, leveraging AI, being very prescriptive for the seller, what actions to take and when with which customers. And then thinking about how do you drive sales productivity around pipeline management, deal management, forecasting. So these are, there's plenty of tools and technologies out there on that side. And I think the other one is around enablement,
Yeah.
really making sure the sellers are equipped and know how to represent the value proposition to their segment market.
So, what, with that being said, though, what are some drawbacks? I mean, are we moving too fast? Is technology really ready for this explosion, for everyone wanting things now, and for almost that lack of human interaction?
Yeah, that is exactly it. It's what is that balance, right? And I think if you look at the sales technology or even just go to market technology landscape, there are just hundreds and hundreds of tools out there. So I think there's two elements of it. One is customer experience. How do you optimize for that customer experience and not overdo it with technology and digital engagement, and know when it's appropriate to be bringing in an account rep or bringing in a solutions architect to add value to that engagement. And then on the other side is the rep productivity side is, reps have a finite amount of time in their day, and we want to maximize the amount of time they're in front of customers and partners. Adding more and more things to that tech stack without thinking about how it's brought together in the context of the rep experience is going to be counterproductive. So I think about rep experience and I think about customer experience. If it's going to be additive and create a better experience for each of them, then I think it's worth looking at. If not, then you should really think about, do you need to add that additional tool to your kit?
What role will AI and even ML, machine learning, just play in organization, strengthening like an organization? Like, tell me about how that will all combine and play this role.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it has a big role. I'll start with that. I think there's two areas I think about it. One is around sales productivity. How do you make your reps or on the post sales side, your customer success reps highly efficient and productive? What action should they be taking and when and with whom? So being very instrumental in that guided selling journey on what touch points should happen at which frequency. And I think on the other side is around just customer experience. Where are there elements of the customer journey that can be automated? And where can we help a customer or a prospect learn and engage about a solution without having to engage with a human? Because again, it goes back to our earlier point around they can do it at their own time in the way they feel comfortable and at their rate and pace, and then get more further down the sales process later. I think the other area is we touched on the intersection between marketing and sales earlier. I think about that as a really important connection in the context of understanding your total addressable market and going at it together. We call it marketing here at HubSpot. It's that joint marketing and sales alignment. And there it's around identifying the right fit of customers, the right intent that they have to engage with you, and are they the highest propensity customers that you should be going after that are part of your target market. So that's another example where AI plays a huge just a huge role.
So, what would then the philosophy be for HubSpot when it comes to kind of combining all three aspects of that?
We brought marketing, sales, and customer success together under a flywheel organization, under a single chief customer officer about probably 2.5 years ago. And it was very much along the lines of, if we want an integrated customer experience across the customer journey, then we need to think about each of those phases: the attract, the engage, the delight, in a seamless end-to-end way across that. So the customer doesn't feel like they're moving from marketing to sales to customer success. They're just engaging with HubSpot.
It's a very collaborative experience then.
Yeah, thinking horizontally across the customer experience as opposed to just at the functional level. And I think that RevOps plays just a key role there in bringing together that end-to-end view and aligning these teams across that customer journey.
If people, or I should say companies, didn't make that investment yet fully in this whole digital transformation, have they missed the boat with that? Is it too late? Can they still get on board and be successful in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's ever too late. Honestly, I think you have the benefit of learning from other companies, other industries that have gone down that path, and you can learn from some of the obstacles and challenges they faced, and really look at it as, where do you go from here, and what does the next 3 to 5 years look for your company? And I don't think there's any point in thinking about why you didn't do it, or the conditions may not have been right. You may not have been hearing it from your customers, right? And that so I think every industry is going to go through a different wave and different adoption curve for that matter. So I think there's no better time than now to go see the right time to start planting some seeds. Yeah, so it does start with CRM. I think there's a core element of that is the foundation. I talked about the data a little bit earlier. Those are key. I think guided selling, yeah, and those are typically within a sales engagement platform, or in our context, it's our sales hub, where it's helping sellers identify where to go spend their time and drive automated workflows that automate elements of their day-to-day job so they can spend as much time in front of customers. I think pipeline management, deal management, forecasting. I'll call those as the next elements of the stack. It's you're making your reps productive. How do you ensure that you're running a highly efficient, effective sales organization? And it's looking at, do you have enough pipeline? Do you have it? Is it of the right quality? Are you managing your deal effectively through the sales cycle? And then ultimately, are you forecasting and representing your business properly to the rest of the organization so you can do proper resource planning? So I think those you can call those three different ones, or they can be part of a unit. I would also say enablement capabilities. There's a lot of tools out there that are around how do you effectively ramp and enable sales reps. So I think if you look at how much hiring has gone on over the past couple of years, it's really important that we ramp our sales reps really, really effectively and quickly to be able to add value to our customers, so that when they're done with that digital part of the journey, or they're ready to engage with a human, it's a highly tailored, customized engagement that's adding value to the overall sales process.
How did you find that switch that, it was like one day we were all going about our business and the next day we were all on lockdown, but yet businesses still had to continue. People
Yeah.
still had to be making money. The economy still had to continue. How did you find all of that to just, like, how did that adjustment happen so quickly? I mean, you must have been amazed within your industry.
Yeah, you're right. I think it goes back to, if pre-pandemic, if you started embracing digital engagement and not fighting it, I think you really were better prepared to weather the storm and come out of it. I think, and I look at, in my time at CA Technologies, I ran a digital sales organization, and it was earlier stages of when digital was becoming an acceptable form of engagement with customers. And it was continually testing how far could you take the sales cycle without having to involve someone, a human on the other side. And it really forced us to think about collaboration technologies, social, all these different methods of engaging with our customers without actually seeing them. We're traveling and going and getting on a plane, and that was inside sales. But there was a group of field sales, outside sellers, that embraced those same technologies because they realized customers were getting more and more used to that way of engaging. And if they could do a Zoom call or could do a WebEx, they might not want to spend a half a day learning about something which they could learn about in a much more time efficient way. And I think some of those sellers that really embraced those types of engagement models and social selling just adapted to that COVID wave easier. And now I say, like, everybody is in some way a digital seller. Yeah. Right? Whether you were on the inside or outside, it's almost like, what does that even mean at this point? Inside or outside? It's customer engagement, and where you happen to do it or how you happen to do it is a little less relevant. right?
If you were to kind of make a call or try to do a deal on the phone, it's like, well, wait a minute, why not this face-to-face interaction? Did that help when it came to, RevOps, and when it came to just kind of meeting your expectations?
Yeah, I think RevOps, I look at RevOps as really that connective tissue across go to market, right? And it driving that connected go to market experience. And especially in the world we're in right now, which is just high transaction volume, lots of digital touch points. Technology plays a really key role in bringing all that together, and collaboration technology it is an element of that. That's just sort of it's such a key underpinning of that customer engagement model. So in terms of how RevOps brought together go to market and then how we're using that to engage with our customers, I think it just sped it up.
Yes, without a doubt, without a doubt. For the best, would you say?
I think so. And I think it's accelerated what was already happening, right? I think depending on what studies you look at, digital transformation accelerated during the COVID period, probably 10 years, depending on what study you go look at. So in 3 years, we got as far as we would have gotten 10 years later because there was a forcing function. So I think it was going there. It was just going there at a more deliberate pace as opposed to we need to do this in order to be more effective with our customers.
We've dealt with COVID. We're in this post-pandemic period now, but the whole economy is still shaky. We're still not on solid footing here. How are you preparing for what the new year holds, for what 2023 holds as far as the whole overall outlook?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think everybody is asking this question right now. And I think it's about being flexible and just maintaining a level of agility. I think it's being prudent and thoughtful about where you're investing your resources and not not shutting everything down. I think you have to be really thoughtful about when when the market does shift, are you ready to capitalize on the opportunity, especially if you're in a market that is large and continuing to grow. This is a business cycle, and I think we have to just keep that in context. We've been through these before. We'll go through them in the future, and it's thinking about how do you maintain, how are you thoughtful and prudent and efficient with your resources and your headcount investments, but also maintaining that agility when you start to see that the market might be opening up in a more more aggressive way than it is now, or budgets are starting to become more free flowing with that you're able to go capitalize on that and not regret having not being too cautious during that period of time.
So then, do you think leaders should pause, or should they just continue investing in sales given whatever happens with the climate, whether it is a recession or a mild recession, or whether we just stay status quo? Should they continue, or should they pause with their investments?
I think that depends for every company. It depends on where you've made your investments in the past and what is your relative mix of investments, right? And so it's a hard question to give a general answer to. I would say that thinking about ROI on every investment, I think is really top of mind right now. Are you getting incremental return? Is it something that is a critical investment, either from a go-to-market perspective or from a product engineering perspective, that it's so critical to your roadmap that you would put yourself behind once you come out of this whatever we call it, right? this this period of time, the R word, and I think that's a judgment call. But I think the scrutiny around incremental investment is high, as it should be, and just being really thoughtful about could you, by adding that additional headcount, can you capitalize on more market opportunity during this period, or are you at sufficient capacity where you don't need to do that and you're better off making that investment and accelerating your product roadmap to pull a set of capabilities in 6 months? Those are trade-offs I think every company has to make on their own, based on where they are in their maturity and also relative investment portfolio.
In the overall market landscape, then, how does that impact the sales or RevOps function within a company? Just looking at the economic forecast, how does that affect it?
I think it makes RevOps a really critical component of the go-to-market engine, and it's RevOps is a relatively new function, and I think it's still being defined. I'd call it if I think about customer success and where it was 10, 15 years ago to what it is now, RevOps, I think, is going through a similar, evolution. And some people think of it as sales ops with a broader remit. And I think of it as very different than that. I think it's a core capability. It's the go-to-market COO of the organization, and driving that connected go-to-market motion across marketing, sales, customer success, and reducing those friction points that might exist. And I think in this market, being really agile, reducing friction internally so that you can deliver a great customer experience are going to be even more important. And I think RevOps is just playing a very big role in that. Plus, also being able to help the organization sense and respond. What are the leading indicators and KPIs that we should be paying a lot of attention to, as every week, every month, to get signals of how customers and market behavior may or may not be changing.
Since the market has been so different, what has been your experience then, in the past during the pandemic? Because that is just a whole different definition and different experience when it comes to that. What has been your experience?
Yeah, so I was not at HubSpot at that point, but AWS at that point, and it was very interesting because I think during that period of time, during the pandemic, digital transformation was becoming a bigger and bigger topic, right? And a lot of customers and prospects at that point leverage cloud to get there faster. So I think it depends on the industry that you're in. In some cases, these types of market conditions can be an accelerant. In some cases, it could be a headwind, right?
Mhm.
And I think it really depends on, go back to what market are you in, and what is the end value proposition that you're delivering, and can you play a role in that?
So, what changes then typically happen during a time of uncertainty? What have you found in your experience?
Yeah, I think people get very the anxiety certainly goes up, and I think people tend to get more cautious about how they approach their day to day. I think that there's an opportunity to really think about where is the opportunity in if it's a recession or whatever it happens to be. Where's the opportunity, and where does your solution or offering, where does it play into that broader opportunity with your customers? Can you help your customers get more efficient and productive so they come out stronger on the other end? And what role does technology, what role does process, what role does enablement play in that particular context, right? So I think there are foundational things to look at during a period of just tightening, where you use it as an opportunity to just get stronger and really go look at your foundation and see, is this the right foundation? Are there areas that I could really go strengthen and get better with, so that I come out with a more scalable and extensible platform coming out of it?
So that's forward thinking. What about internally? How do you manage that? What typically happens then during a period of uncertainty internally?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. And I think it's one where, especially as we're in this hybrid world, you just need to over communicate and just be really clear and candid. And I think it's communicate is what I would say there, because everybody's wondering what's happening out there in the market, and nobody really knows, right? There's lots of opinions and points of view on that. And then that's one side of it. And then it's, how is the company interpreting what's happening out there and responding? And that is something that we can control, and we can message more clearly. And and also be candid about where we don't have the answers and where we do feel comfortable sharing what we do know and the approach we're going to take. So I think it is communication is like at a premium right now, and I think especially in a hybrid world that we're in, where it's not bumping into somebody in the office and communicating that way, or a big town hall that's in an auditorium and an office. You just have to get creative in, what are the different modes of communication and how do you get to your different employee audiences that way.
I love that piece of advice, because I think at the end of the day, communication really applies to everyone. And in this day and age, when we're dealing with the hybrid, it is about over communicating, because that's how you build the trust and a person feels comfortable knowing that their needs are being met.
100%. I think it's around employee satisfaction, engagement, especially when we think about, folks that were hired during the pandemic and have never been to an office, right? And how do you create that connectivity and that sense of community with that broader team, not just within your own function, but across those functions? That's spot on. I think it goes back to my point earlier around ROI, and it's really thinking about incremental investment and what will be the return and over what time period, and using that as a way of really looking at a portfolio of trade-off decisions that you have and evaluating those based on what's the magnitude of return and over what period of time, and thinking holistically about it so you can manage a portfolio of investments and take some bets and look at where you're already taking the bet and it's paying off. You want to double down on it. So I think it's taking a very disciplined and data-driven approach to thinking about how you approach investments. I think the other is it's just an opportunity to also look at your existing investments. Are they deployed in are they deployed in the most optimal fashion? Are there things you were doing, or were there initiatives that you were driving that were relevant a year ago, 2 years ago, that are no longer relevant? And use as an opportunity to just almost like do a little bit of zero-based budgeting or a clean slate approach to say, how am I going to spend my time? Where am I going to allocate my resources, given the current realities of what I see for the next couple of years, as opposed to how I may have been operating through the pandemic period. Yeah, I think it's being really grounded in what are your North Star metrics and leading indicators of your business, and just paying really close attention to those and how they're changing on a monthly, weekly, or as real time as you can get them. I think too often we pay attention to the lagging indicators like revenue, operating expense, and it's too late at that point. What are the signals you're getting from your customers? What are the signals you're getting from the market? And how do you use that to adapt and pivot in near real time? So if your assumptions were wrong, you can pivot and do it with the least amount of disruption possible. But you're also not waiting 6 or 9 months to go course correct, and then you've lost that window of time. So being dynamic and agile in your thinking and being really data oriented in your approach is what I would really underscore.
How do you stay competitive? How do you stay competitive in this field? Because as you said, RevOps seems fairly new, and it's still defining itself. So how do you stay competitive? How do you stand out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like to read a lot about what's happening. Not books necessarily in this space, because there aren't a ton of books out there. It's getting created and developed as we speak. So I think lots of blogs, articles out there on RevOps practitioners on how they're thinking about the evolution of RevOps. I think the other is just community is really important. Thinking about where are their go-to-market communities that are talking about RevOps or talking about how go-to-market is evolving, and being part of those, like smaller, more intimate sort of roundtable discussions where you can have one-on-one discussions over a meal. So conferences where those are starting to come back now. So conferences and these smaller in-person gatherings I find to be hugely valuable. And just having like conversation with other practitioners and what does your journey look like? How are you approaching RevOps at your company? What are the pitfalls or roadblocks that you're facing? And do we have some parallel ground, or is there areas I can help or they can help, vice versa? So I think it's just keeping a really open mind to maintaining learning agility is how I'd sort of sum it up.
How do you hope to see the next even 5 to 10 years go for this industry, for your career? What do you hope to see?
Yeah, it's a long time to predict what will happen given the rate of change, but I think it's that figuring out that mix between hybrid versus in person versus digital, and what does that customer engagement model look like between digital and human. I think that is still something that companies and partners they're all trying to figure out. Is this here to stay? I think it is here to stay in terms of this digital engagement model, but then where and how and when to complement that with people along that customer journey. I think that's going to take some time. I think there's some industries that got got on the bandwagon really early in terms of embracing this digital sales wave. But I think other companies, I think through the pandemic and other industries during the pandemic and certainly now are really thinking about how to do that and at what rate and pace they should be investing to go deliver that customer experience. And I think the other aspect we didn't really talk about is I think there's an efficiency and productivity angle to this from a company's bottom line on where can you leverage digital and automation in that whole buyer's journey versus purely from a people standpoint. So I think that's another thing that's going to get figured out over the next X number of years or so.
So, final thoughts as we head into 2023. What do you hope then? What are you looking forward to for the new year?
Yeah, I think look, staying optimistic. I think staying agile, staying hyper aware, and being able to and pivot and respond proactively to what customer signals are out there. So I think this is a year and of just really paying attention to your customers. What do they need? How do you help them navigate what they're going through? If you do that and really pay attention to that across the customer journey, then I think it's going to be as manage it as best as we can, right? That would be my number one takeaway on that.
I think that's the key to success then.
I think so.
Sid, I just want to thank you so much for those insightful thoughts. We truly appreciate your time today. Once again, Sid Kumar, Senior Vice President RevOps with HubSpot. Thanks for your time.